Get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. For those that don't know me, my name is Angie Jones, Director of the Family Business Center at the University of Toledo. We have a really exciting webinar for you this morning. John Edwards with Communica is going to talk about demystifying marketing, the role of AI in ChatGPT in business. There's going to be a lot of really great content. Not sure if the crowd is new to AI, using it just a little bit, but there are so many fantastic tools out there. I use it almost daily, and it has really impacted my level of productivity. So I'm excited to hear all the other things that we can do with it. So a few general Zoom rules here. If you don't mind keeping yourself muted. If you have any questions, use the chat feature at the bottom. Go ahead and put your question in the chat feature. I will watch it. I will ask the question when appropriate. I will try to hold them to the end, but if something does need clarified, I'll find a pause or breaking point to ask the question for you. If you have more of an in-depth question and you feel you need to ask yourself, just flag me through the messaging system and I will call on you when there's a good point to do that. So with that, I am going to hand it over to John Edwards and let you get started.
All right, Angie, thank you. Megan as well. And thank you to the Family Business Center for inviting me to discuss this topic with you and share some insights and information. So we'll go ahead and get started. A couple of quick quotes that I think pretty easily capture both the excitement and the angst around AI and ChatGPT. Here's the first one. Best case is it's so good that it's hard to imagine. This is Sam Altman. You're going to be introduced to him a little bit more later in the presentation. He is the founder of OpenAI, which is the creator of ChatGPT. And from the same man, could be lights out for all of us. So with that setup, we'll go ahead and move forward and see where the journey takes us. But before we do talk about the technology, what's driving all of this change? And in a nutshell, it's our human propensity to like outsourcing things. We've outsourced math to our calculators. We have outsourced our spelling and our grammar to software. And this is probably the subject of an entirely different webinar, our memory to the internet. So anyway, it's been going on a long time. The reason is because for businesses in particular, we like to pursue three things. We want it good, we want it fast, we want it cheap. We understand that you can generally only have two of those things. So you got to pick which two that you want, but that is not true in all cases. It may be true for human-generated output, consulting services, or things that you have to build with atoms, but it's not true of technology. And here are some examples. So in the 1990s and 2000s, I'm picking up feedback here. Pause here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so better, faster, cheaper, Netscape and the internet, Amazon, Google search, all great tools that we are not going to give up anytime soon. Business services like LinkedIn, social media services like Facebook, WordPress, GoToMeeting, our ability to not have to get on a plane to fly somewhere to see somebody, Twitter, YouTube, Google Docs and Sheets. And then in the 2010s to 2015s, you had more social media services get introduced. Zoom takes off, which we're using today. Convenience services like Uber Eats and DoorDash, Amazon Alexa, the list goes on and on and on. But something happened in 2015 that sort of triggered the whole, sort of a shockwave around Silicon Valley. And what that was Google acquired a London-based company called DeepMind. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later. But basically, Silicon Valley had a freak out. Everybody that wasn't Google got really worried about the implications of where things were headed. So Sam Altman, shortly after that acquisition, convened a dinner party with Elon Musk and a whole lot of heavy hitters from Silicon Valley to discuss what they were going to do about this. So shortly thereafter, Altman creates OpenAI with a bunch of investors. Microsoft, seeing the competitive advantage and need to get involved, becomes an investor very quickly. Musk eventually does leave that board, citing Tesla and SpaceX, but he's already talking about competitive services right now. So GPT-1, which is what's called a large language model, I'll also be talking about that here shortly, launches in June of 2018. So this is a big deal because everything that ChatGPT is built on is using what's called a large language model. Very quickly, they come out with their second version of it in February of 2019. OpenAI started off as a not-for-profit. Early into 2019, they became a profit company. There was some controversy around that. Certain employees didn't like the premise of moving to a for-profit business, but they did it anyway. And part of the reason is that it's very expensive to run ChatGPT. Microsoft pumps in its first $1 billion before 2020. GPT-3 launches. And then very quickly, they launched their image generator, DALL-E. They basically stop collecting the information that feeds the large language model, which is basically the entire internet. It's frozen as of September of 2021. That has implications for people who use the tool as well, which we can talk about. And then DALL-E 2 launches, so they're very quickly iterating their product set, the image generator, and then GPT 3.5 launches in June of 2022. And then Microsoft commits $10 billion to grow this enterprise and this tool set. OpenAI closes the year with $30 million in revenue and $416 million of expenses. So they're upside down pretty heavy at this point in terms of revenues and cash. But we all know what happened on November 30th, 2022, right? So ChatGPT launches. And within 5 days, they have 1 million users. It took Facebook over 8 months to hit that point. It's both praised and banned in certain countries within its first week. And the company is valued at $29 billion. Very quickly after that, before the end of January, they surpass 100 million users. It's the fastest platform growth in history. ChatGPT Plus launches on February 1st. That's a $20 per month version of the product, which for many people, myself included, helps me get in and use the tool without getting the dreaded, our servers are busy, please come back later. Although I know not everybody experiences that with the free tool. But they're already projecting 100 million in revenues for 2023 and $1 billion in 2024. Very quickly after that, Google tries to deploy a competitive alternative. They held a press conference in Paris. They're going to show off their new product, Bard. Bard is asked a question about NASA and rockets, and it gets the answer wrong. And when it does, within 6 hours, Google's market cap has dropped by $100 billion. So the stakes are very, very high here in this space. OpenAI launches an API for ChatGPT. The big deal here is that now the product can scale. Instead of humans entering one prompt at a time, you could do thousands of prompts. So the implications are very, very large here. ChatGPT 4 launches. This is the next version of the large language model in mid-March. And then we sort of close out everything between then and today. They surpass 175 million users. They have 1.8 billion visits in April. They get 60 million visitors a day now on the platform. And the probably the most astonishing metric that I see is that time on site is over 8.5 minutes. So people don't just go here, ask a question and leave. They really work it. And Google's CEO, by the way, says we are an AI first company. So today, these are examples of products that are powered by GPT. So you've got the chat version of it, which is ChatGPT, but you can do grammar correction, text to command, keyword building, have it automatically write product descriptions. You can do Q&A, you can do language translation, you can get factual answers, you can generate names for products. This is just a small list of all of the things that you can do when you have a large language model sitting underneath you and you're tapping into it. So how does that all work? At its heart, ChatGPT is basically it's autocomplete on steroids. It's an AI tool. We're going to talk about what that means. It can read, summarize, and translate text in order to predict the future words in a sentence. So The technical term is called next token, but basically it is just saying, if you ask this, put in this series of words and you ask a request, it's going to go through a lot of parameters and it's going to figure out what the best or most likely outcome, what should come next, what should follow in the answer. So what is AI? Very simply, it's machines or computers performing human tasks or tasks that would require human intelligence. What is machine learning? Machine learning is the application of basically machines building complex maps that dictate the statistical likelihood that any group of words will appear next to any other. So that's how that prediction sequence is built. So we're going to see that here. It's an algorithm and it improves as you increase the amount of data. And then there's something called deep learning, right? So to build that complex map of parameters, deep learning is a term of the art that is used where a large language model can be applied to vast amounts of data to create those statistical probabilities of those connections. So here's where we end up, deep learning. It uses neural networks, which basically are kind of analogized to the human brain, and it's processing all of the data from the internet as of September of 2021. So large language models that you're going to start to hear about or have already heard about. So OpenAI's large language model is GPT. Google has one, Bard. Microsoft is Copilot, and then OpenAI has DALL-E. So some of these are products and some of these are large language models. So how vast is the data that is being applied underneath all of this stuff? With ChatGPT 4, you can see that we are at over 1 trillion parameters. So every time you type in a prompt into ChatGPT and it gives you an answer generally within about a second, it is hitting 1 trillion different combinations of words and connections in order to produce the answer. And you can see the astounding growth. When I gave you that timeline before, ChatGPT 2, 2018, 2019, GPT 3.4, then we've got GPT 4 today. You can just see how it's the upward slope is very dramatic. So because these are statistical predictions, additional accuracy measures need to be undertaken. So basically the models need to be trained. This is another thing you might start hearing about. So it's taking the original data from the web, it's giving answers, but it doesn't necessarily know if that answer is good or bad. So there are two ways in which it figures that out. One is if you put in a prompt and you ask and you get a response, it will ask you, was this better or worse than the answer that you put in before? This is information that is getting fed back into the platform so that they can have a nice, strong feedback loop. The other inspiration here was that the idea of using a chat interface to get this feedback loop where you can either say better or worse, or you can say, hey, I want to have what's called a threaded conversation. I'm going to ask my first prompt. It's going to give me an answer. I'm going to go, well, that's kind of interesting. So then I'm going to give it a follow-on question. And I say, oh, that's really nice. Okay, now I want you to write this as an executive summary, make it 3 paragraphs. Okay, that's great. And I want you to write it for a CEO of a business. So that whole sort of back and forth is called a thread. And that too is informing the interface about what was wanted and what ultimately was delivered. And so it's all playing a role. And unlike a search, the old historical Google search, where you would put in some terms, you get some results. If you didn't like it, you put in another search term. This is an ongoing thing that is sort of self-improving as you go. So that was the inspiration for adding the chat layer to it. And that is why it is called ChatGPT. So I want to share through this webinar some examples of how businesses can or will start using products like ChatGPT. So here's one example. Neighborhood coffee shop barista copies and pastes the recent customer reviews, social media interactions, and purchase history into ChatGPT. So that's the data that flows in. And then it asks the question, please create 4 personalized drink recommendations and 3 popular flavor combinations that I can promote via text messages. So you give it some preceding data, you ask a question about the data, and then out pops something automatically that you can now start to massage and use for that text messaging campaign. So there are business implications when you can do that, right? When any team member in any role in your company can make a computer produce outputs based on inputs, which are called prompts, everyone suddenly becomes a creator or a developer within your business, right? So a developer used to be somebody who could get outputs from a computer because they understood programming languages like Python and C++. That has changed. Here's another example of how someone would take advantage of this new capability. General manager, local hardware store, no coding experience, goes to ChatGPT and asks and prompts basically, generate a step-by-step guide and sample code for integrating a web form into a WordPress site and ensure it's compatible with popular themes and plugins and it maintains responsive design. ChatGPT will do coding. It would understand a prompt like that, and it would take somebody who has no programming experience, but they got a simple or basic or pretty common WordPress site, and they want to make an improvement to it. And there you go. So the technical implications are significant as well. English, or basically any spoken language, is fast becoming the world's hottest programming language. And developing that skill for a person or a business is called prompt engineering. So the real success that is going to start to develop here very quickly are people who understand how to write good prompts. Here's another example. Small gardening business goes to ChatGPT and prompts, analyze customer preferences and foot traffic patterns in garden centers and suggest an optimized store layout for me that promotes efficient flow, enhances product visibility, and encourages impulse purchases. The staffing implications when you can do something like that, the better the prompt, the better the output. Partly that's a function of threaded conversations. Partly it's just getting to know the tool and the kinds of questions to ask and getting really, really good at it. The better the prompter, the more valuable the employee. So there's a lot of talk right now about what are the implications, the human implications in terms of roles and goals within organizations. Right now, the consensus is that it's not so much about displacing current people, but that the people who understand how to use this tool, all things being equal, are going to be the more valuable. Case in point, you're looking to hire two different people, both of them on their resume said that they're really proficient with Microsoft Office. One of them, on the other hand, is really proficient with products like ChatGPT as well and how to get productivity out of it. So that person suddenly becomes more attractive as a hiring candidate. And if they're an existing employee within the business, they become more attractive. So when language is programming, your best developer could soon be the English or communications major on your team. They could come from some other discipline, but these tools are allowing people who really are willing to experiment and learn to produce things that they would have normally have had to go on and learn on their own and figure out how to do. And all of that is sort of cut away and you can kind of get right to the output generation. So taking that into consideration, here's another use case. Family-run restaurant discovers the greater's talent for writing AI prompts. To optimize table reservations and manage daily specials is a competitive advantage. And it's an important intellectual property for the business. So that's the next business implication. Legal. Prompts within your company and the output they produce are intellectual and business property assets. They are yours. And I think there's going to be a whole series of steps and considerations on how do you protect those assets, those outputs, those inputs. It's going to be very important for businesses going forward. Another use case here. Local boutique clothing manager uses what's called multimodality, which is just a fancy way of saying, I want to give it an image and I want it to generate text for me based on that image, or I want to give it text and I want it to generate an image for me. So what they'll be able to do soon is they could take with the phone, generate 5 stylish outfit suggestions based on the following customer uploaded photos and written suggestions. So go to your social media site, see some outfits that people love that they've posted that they bought at your store, get some other kinds of inputs that are visual inputs, put them into the system and say, okay, I need to now start to figure out what I want to start to arrange together or new clothes that I might want to buy that are going to fit these. Large language models are going to be able to produce those kinds of outputs. So there are huge time implications as well with these tools. Because it can automate routine tasks like content creation, which was an example we used, and report generation, which is an example I'm going to show, it frees up significant time and resources for more impactful business activities. Here's an example. Sales manager, manufacturing company, has a Salesforce dashboard, has a screenshot of the Salesforce dashboard, needs to write a summary for the CEO about what that dashboard is saying. Soon you will be able to take that image, put it into a large language model like a ChatGPT or some other version of that kind of program and say, please look at the graphs and charts in this image and give me a written executive summary of what it says about our sales performance in 3 paragraphs. Then the follow-on threaded prompt says, the tone should be professional and the audience is our CEO and CFO. And with those inputs, it will tell the story of what it understands. Sales are up, sales are down, this, that, and it'll write it in a fashion that is appropriate to the audience that you want to have read it. There are operational implications with AI and ChatGPT because they can be used to create inputs and outputs that are tailored to specific niche or areas of expertise to streamline operations. Here's an example of what that might look like. Medium-sized consulting firm, copies of the last 3 months of product sales data for a client of theirs by industry and region. They pulled this from a spreadsheet. They literally paste that directly into ChatGPT with the prompt. Please identify the top 5 industry product combinations for the region from the following data. So it will be able to understand if sales are up or down one region versus another. It will also start to be able to do correlations and stuff that might have been beyond the skill set of someone who doesn't necessarily do this kind of stuff a lot, or it's a tedious exercise. It can now be done much more quickly using these tools. And there are scaling implications. I mentioned earlier that ChatGPT made available their application programmer interface, their API. So this allows you to do prompting at scale and using large amounts of your own internal proprietary company data. Here's an example of what that might look like. E-commerce retailer, they want to track customer sentiment. They integrate ChatGPT into their customer support system using the API from OpenAPI. Once that's done, they write a prompt that says, please analyze the last 60 days of customer interactions, inquiries, feedback, and reviews, and provide insights on overall customer sentiment. Are they happy? Are they angry? Are they frustrated? Things going well? Things are not going well? And then the follow-on prompt is identify any emerging trends or issues that require immediate attention. So it will understand that you want to now prioritize what those insights are, and it will give you a list of results that come back. But with any new technologies, there are issues and concerns. And I think some of you have already started to wrestle with these. One of them is this: why does ChatGPT get it wrong sometimes? Because it is essentially autocomplete on steroids, it invents information at times. There's a word for this. It's called hallucinations. Again, the goal of the system is to predict the sequence of words. You give it inputs and it's going to predict the best combination of outputs that it thinks are available. But it does not have a mechanism to know whether that is true or not. These are statistical probabilities. A simple example, and this isn't necessarily a hallucination, is I might type in, my brain is kind of stuck on, oh, what comes after Mary, Mary? And I put that in. ChatGPT might say, quite contrary, because statistically, that is the most likely thing that it found through all of the data permutations that it had. But I was looking for Mary, Mary had a little lamb, right? So not necessarily hallucination, but I didn't get the output that I wanted because it was the probabilities that drove the answer. So some of you may have seen an article. I was told this same story was in the Toledo Blade over the weekend about a lawyer who was suing an airline on behalf of a client and used ChatGPT to come up with citations and cases and examples for the legal filing. Well, it turned out 6 of the cases were bogus judicial decisions with bogus quotes and bogus internal citations. And the lawyer greatly regrets having utilized this artificial intelligence to supplement his legal research. And will never do so in the future without verification of its authenticity. So it's important to know that what you get out of ChatGPT isn't always right. It isn't always good. I mean, sometimes it's 80% good, which is very helpful. Sometimes it's 95% good, and that's really helpful. But rarely is it 100% helpful. And your specific personal domain knowledge and experience needs to be a lens upon which you take the output from ChatGPT and then start to think about the implications, and does this feel right, and is this useful, and or what parts of this are useful. So there's a whole lot to unpack with these kinds of outcomes. Asking ChatGPT to write code can be a problem as well, and can be dangerous. I gave you the example of a guy who wanted to take and put a web form on his website. Well, Stack Overflow is a website that really is built to answer questions like that, human to human. The humans found ChatGPT and go, whoa, I can get the answers so much faster. So they started taking ChatGPT answers and trying to share them with everybody who was asking questions. Turns out that many of them looked correct, but in practice turned out to be wrong. So again, got to apply the air brakes a little bit and sort of think about the implications here. The other one is the second example. Cybersecurity firm was able to use ChatGPT to compose every phrase of a cyber attack, right? They asked it to craft a convincing phishing email. They asked it to write malicious code that would get around the firewalls. And in some cases, it was successful in giving them guidance in how to get around the cybersecurity. What is the implication here? The implication here is that somebody who has criminal intent, but does not have the skills to pull off what they want to do, could use a tool like ChatGPT and accomplish that nefarious objective. So I will, to make people feel a little more comfortable, cybersecurity firms have been using AI since the early 2000s. So they are ahead of these folks in most cases, but it will be a race between competing factions in terms of where this goes. There are also ethical and legal challenges in terms of generating content that was scraped from the internet without permission. Okay, this is a big deal, and it's already produced a couple of significant lawsuits, the outcome of which could change the trajectory of these tools as well. Microsoft and OpenAI are facing a $9 billion class action lawsuit because they failed to credit or compensate coders who were in a product called GitHub to basically help inform its training model, its large language model, in violation of their own open licensing terms. Stability AI and Midjourney, these are products that are image generators, and they are being sued by people like Getty Images for copyright infringement. So this is when you say, I want to have this kind of an image, but do it in the style of this photographer or this artist. Because Getty content was used to help produce that generative output, they feel like it was done without permission, and there are significant legal ramifications for trying to do so. So we still need to see how those things play out. And then finally, there's the prospect of job displacement and the ability of AI to inadvertently spread misinformation, fake content. There are significant ethical and societal dilemmas that could occur when that happens. For that reason, Sam Altman in mid-May appeared before Congress, and they had a full day of hearings. These were the 5 key takeaways. The job replacement issue is unresolved. There is a consensus between business and government that AI does need to be regulated. Misinformation is a significant concern, especially with the upcoming election in 2024, and the ability to spread fake information and reinforce biases. Remember, the internet was scraped. Human beings put the content that's on the internet. Human beings have biases, known or unknown, and those can be reflected in the statistical probabilities that are used to produce the outputs to the questions that we asked. Intellectual property and ownership of content are valid concerns. It's not just the court system that's going to have to think through this, but it's also going to be government. And the hearing did not have enough time to address potential impact on the economy or national security. So there are still some big things that need to be wrestled with as this stuff unfolds. But with all these challenges, I will say the competition is only heating up. Google is now, this is a quote from the CEO, Google is now an AI-driven company. That's a significant statement. We are now an AI-driven company. So here's an example of what that could look like. So Palm is the name of the tool set for Google's large language model to be deployed across Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Search, all the kind of Google apps that you might, Google Maps and that kind of stuff. So pet store owner wants to optimize my current inventory, list it in Google Sheets based on last month's sales volume, and then create 6 social media posts using customer testimonials stored in my Google Docs. So inventory management is going to be made easier if I'm using a certain set of Google tools. Creating customer testimonials based on social media inputs is another one that I could use using other Google tools. So you can start to see how these things are quickly coming together. Microsoft, the name for their product that integrates large language models into their Microsoft 365 suite of applications is called Copilot. And here's another example of how that would work. Trainer, local gym, copy and pastes a client's workout from an Excel sheet via Microsoft Copilot with a prompt, please make me a 5-slide PowerPoint presentation on the results of this workout written in a positive, motivating tone. So I'm taking essentially what were data points written into a spreadsheet, reps, time on machine, whatever, and then that it's translated into a visual presentation that can be concisely delivered. And because I want to motivate the person to keep working harder, I can actually control the tone of the output that's prompted in. So you can imagine the convenience that this could pose for the gym owner. So what are some implications for businesses and marketers based on everything that I've just talked about? One of them is this. If you ask tools like Google Home, Siri, Alexa, by the way, these are all AI-driven devices as well, you get an answer, not a search result. That's a big deal. And it's a big deal, especially for search engine optimization. And especially when you're using tools like ChatGPT, which don't, by their current nature, give you somewhere to go after it gives you the answer. They basically took all your great blog stuff that you've been putting out there to become known to people, right? You're trying to get known early on in the path to purchase, the buyer journey. We call it top of funnel. So it's the awareness stage, right? I'm going to write a killer article about this particular topic because it relates to my industry and it's going to get me high on Google search results. Well, that information now lives also in the large language model, and the answer that is given may include some of your stuff, but isn't going to include a link to your website. So that has huge implications. So we just talked about this, so that first point. So SEO is going to need to change. It's not going to go away, but as long as chat-based interfaces start to become the preference, right? I used to go to Google because I would ask a question. It gave me a list of 10 websites that might have the answer to my question. They also started snippets where they would pull a piece of content out and try to keep you in Google. All of that, all of a sudden I go, no, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to ask the question that I want the answer to, and I just want the answer. So middleman is cut out. That's 70% of Google's revenue stream is serving ads inside of those search results. So that part of their business is gravely threatened. So what can you do about that? Well, one, we're back to building brand. We're back to word of mouth. We're back to name recognition. So in the SEO world, we used to shoot for about half the traffic coming to your website from what we call non-branded search results, right? They're interested in what the thing that you do, but they're not asking about you. And then that's top of funnel, kind of middle funnel. And then middle and bottom of funnel is now they know you and they're considering you and they want to know more about you or engage with you, right? That's branded search, right? So some form of your brand name or your product name is in the search, right? That was a 50-50 mix. That may now need to jump to 80 or 90% branded traffic. Because if you're going to be cut out in the middle, if people are just getting answers using tools like ChatGPT, that has big implications for, okay, now we need them to already know who you are or hear about you, right? So traditional brand-based strategies are going to become even more critical now than ever. Second thing you want to do is you want to build your community. I'm talking about things like email marketing lists, text message lists, Facebook, Slack, Discord groups. It's a term called reliable reach. And basically what reliable reach is, any channel where there's an algorithm that sits between you and your customers is not reliable reach. I have a lot of people who follow me on LinkedIn. I could write a really important post or content piece on LinkedIn, but I can't control if everybody that follows me is going to see it, and I can't control when they're going to see it. So LinkedIn is making those determinations for me. I don't control those things anymore, right? The algorithm is in control. So what can you do about that to get around it? I mentioned email, right? Your first party email list data, when you hit send, it goes to the person that you want the moment that you wanted them to get it. Same is true for SMS. So building your mobile phone list is going to become increasingly critical because nobody stands between you and that mobile phone. Private social media communities and Facebook, Slack, and Discord. Remember, the algorithm doesn't affect the engagement and the information flow that happens in these spaces. Elements of public relations can be considered pretty direct, pretty, right to the audiences that you want to get them. Direct mail, heck, even fax machines. Anything that you can do to achieve what we call disintermediated reach, right? There's nothing between you and your audience. Those channels are going to be important and vital, especially early on in the buyer journey and in the path to purchase. So I think we're all kind of trying to get our head around what that implies and what are the specific strategies that we can do. But again, we just saw a handful of them. They're old school, but they're incredibly important and maybe more important now than ever. Okay, so this is I'm coming to the end here. What are some things you can start doing today? First of all, start using tools like ChatGPT if you're not already. There's free versions. Just get in. You can't break them. Start playing with them. Put in prompts and see what happens. Second, as you do that, become good at prompting. Put in a question. Put in a general question, you'll get a general answer. Put in a more specific question, you get a more specific answer. Put in some other variation of it. And what you'll start to see is you'll start to build your muscle memory on what's a good way to enter a request of a tool like ChatGPT to quickly get the best output that I want. Experiment. Build a rows and columns from a spreadsheet, copy and paste them into ChatGPT and ask it a question. Hey, tell me what this says and what I should consider doing next. Like the example that I used before, take some sales data by region, copy it, paste it, put it in there, and it'll tell you what's going on. And then you could, by what I do next, you could say, okay, well, what marketing strategies should I do next to do this? Or what social media strategies should I apply to do this next? So again, the answers that you're going to get are not going to be perfect. They are going to be good. Sometimes they'll be very good. But they're definitely going to get you to a point faster in what you want to accomplish than you would have using historical habits and techniques that you might be applying today. Seek out the AI integrations in other platforms. Bard for Google, there's a way to start to play with Google's new interface. Bing has a new AI integration where it's going to give you the result, the ChatGPT-like result and some websites that are relevant. Image generators like DALL-E, where you can basically, this is text to imaging, right? I want a picture of this that looks like that in the style of so-and-so. Just give it a whirl, see what happens, start to understand what some of these capabilities are. And certainly as these things start to get integrated into your common tool sets, whether you're a Google shop using Google Docs and the Google platform of products, or whether you're a Microsoft Office based business, these things are going to start to be integrated. They're going to get announced. Try to take advantage of them as soon as you know that they're available. And then encourage your employees and team members, heck, even your family and friends, do the same thing. It's going to help them to learn how to ask better questions almost immediately. And my last point, better questions are where better businesses and better communities begin. So I think it's a journey worth taking. As I said early on in this presentation, the genie's out of the bottle. We can't put it back in, but there's a lot of very exciting capabilities, and there are some concerns that we're all going to have to navigate together. But I think, as the Chinese proverb once said, may you live in interesting times, and we are in those times. So I hope this was helpful, and we have time for questions if there are any. Be happy to take them now.
Yeah, thank you, John. I thought that was fascinating, and I really appreciate the history of ChatGPT and AI. There are a few questions. If anyone has anyone else, feel free to put it into the chat and I will read those. But two that I have right now is, do you have any thoughts on what might happen with regulation with AI?
Yeah, I feel like the courts might come to some decisions before legislation and government. We've got 2 pending court cases, and those could move through pretty quickly. It is going to get regulated. They have to decide what the framework of the regulation is. Is it privacy regulations? Is it disclosure regulations? Is it product liability regulations? Some form of government is going to have to say, we have heft here. We have weight. You must do this because we have the authority to protect that. So, for example, is there a warning label that goes on it? Or is there some sort of a transparency disclosure? This answer was provided using, AI generated whatever. So I think we're going to see that. And then I think, there are other things that, these training, the training that you do on a large language model to be as good as you can to try and take bias out of them, to take fake news out of them. There are people that sit in that layer. And so who are those people? Where do they come from? And what are the rules that might govern what they're responsible for legally and otherwise? So yes, regulation's coming. And I think that the conversation that was held with Congress, the fact that there was general agreement that both sides, business and government, feel like, yeah, we got to solve this together, I think is encouraging in the sense that they're not fighting against each other. They're not competing, but they're just trying to get their head around it. So, but I do see it as coming.
Can you cover a bit on AI classifiers and how they are used to detect content generated by AI?
Yeah, so that I thought about putting a slide in here. It's, the first instance that I heard about this was when ChatGPT first launched in November 30th. By December, I want to say middle of December, a grad student at MIT had already written a program to tell whether a piece of content had come out of ChatGPT, and probably became the least popular student at that university almost instantly, right? But yeah, those tools are out there, and they're actually pretty good. And one of the ways to use those tools, and again, I don't want to, one of the reasons people ask this is, hey, I want ChatGPT to create a blog article for me, but I don't want to get punished in Google's algorithm, because Google is looking to see whether or not that was human generated or not. Google will always try to prioritize human generated. So these tools will tell you, yeah, this is 85 or 95% produced by a ChatGPT like product. So, be careful, you might want to make some changes, but you can use those same tools, and then you can go, okay, could you rewrite this such that it will score better on the not generated on ChatGPT? So again, there's an arms race going on here. Well, it'll rewrite it, and it'll take some of the things that it used to determine that it was highly likely that it came out of that tool, make the changes to those elements so that when you rerun it through the program, it comes out with a very low score, which is, I guess, technically good if you want to put it online and not get penalized. So yeah, those tools are out there, and yeah, I've started to experiment with them just like everybody else.
Okay, so as an individual utilizes ChatGPT more and more, does it learn your style and kind of adapt its answers towards your tone that you would typically use?
In a way, it does. It will certainly within a specific threaded conversation. So when you start a new thread and you ask more and more questions, it's kind of training you, and you are kind of training it. But is it? It's not like when I come back 2 days later and I start a new thread, oh, you're John. And, it's my understanding that it's not really sort of cultivating that kind of a nuance. That's why writing good prompts is getting better at writing prompts is so helpful, because you understand what you want to get out of it, and so you know how to ask it and then know how to give the answer. But here's a variation of that to think about. You can create fake content in a thread. I mean, talk about training the tool. And an example that that I've actually done, you tell ChatGPT 5 + 5 = 10. And then you say something like, what is 6 + 4? And it will say 10. And then you will say, no, 6 + 4 is 11. And then I could ask, okay, what's 4 + 6 in the same thread? And it will say 11. Okay. So, but here's where people get concerned. Oh my God. So, well, two things. So if you use that in terms of trying to intentionally create fake news, fake narrative, fake bias, you could start to manipulate within a thread and get a really creative piece of output that is wrong, knowably wrong, right? But as soon as you delete that thread and you go back into ChatGPT, or you start a new thread and you say, what is 6 + 4? It will say 10. So you can trick it in the moment, but you're not tricking the larger model, right? It's just within that tiny little bubble of a conversation. But that is still a point of concern, right? Because if I come with a harmful intent, or if I come in with a bias, I can shape an output in that instance that is knowably wrong. And it'll say, okay, all right.
That's so fascinating. I think that is all the questions I had. So I want to thank you, John, for your time. This is very, very interesting. For those online, we did record this session. We will post it to our YouTube page and email out the link if you want to go back and review anything or share it with a colleague. We will get that out to you today or tomorrow. I did want to give a few center updates. If you want to learn more about AI and how you can use it specifically for marketers, we are offering a certificate program here at the University of Toledo through the Family Business Center. It is August 3rd. It's a full day. Pat Gianmarco will be the instructor. He's instructed our other digital marketing programs and other programs here at the university. We have a few spots left. We will offer, because it's been so popular, we will offer another one on September 14th. You do get a University of Toledo certificate. It is $600 for the program, although it is a reimbursable program through Ohio Tech Cred. The next application period is July 1. If you're not familiar with Ohio Tech Cred, very high level, it's a way for you to get up to $2,000 per employee per credential in the technical field. There's 200 different categories that they cover, up to $30,000 for the company per application period. And again, the next application period is July. You have up to a year to use it. You can go back 30 days. It's a wonderful program. If you haven't used it, you want more information on it, please reach out to us. Other programs that we're doing, the week of August 21st, each day we have a certificate program on Microsoft 365, a day on SharePoint, a day on PowerPoint, a day on Excel. So each day is something different. That's also Tech Cred approved and reimbursable. And we have a leadership development program. That's not a Tech Cred one. That's starting in September. And we're running our digital marketing program again. It's a 7-week course, half day, once a week. I think the next session starts October 3rd. So all of this is online on our website, utfamilybusiness.org. You can get to us that way. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us. We also put the links in the email that we send out when we send out the link to this webinar. So we appreciate everyone for joining us today. Let us know if you need anything from the center, if there's anything that we can do to help or support you. And go out and enjoy the beautiful day.